Every morning, Walter Langley followed the same routine. At 83, the structure of habit was his comfort. He would rise at 6, stretch his limbs slowly, and shuffle to the bathroom with the soft thud of slippers on hardwood. The light above the mirror flickered as he flipped the switch, casting shadows across his weathered face. He peered at his reflection, not in vanity, but in check. A daily inspection. The years had thinned his skin and silvered his hair, but his eyes remained clear. On this particular morning, he remembered the words of his late wife, Martha. "It's the little things that keep us going," she used to say. "Pay attention to the small stuff, especially the parts you don't think matter." That line returned to him after a visit from his new primary care doctor, a younger man named Dr. Kwan. During a recent checkup, the doctor had leaned forward and given him advice he hadn't expected. "Walter, if you want to keep living strong, remember this. Wash 3 body parts every day, no exceptions." Walter had chuckled. "Doc, I've been bathing longer than you've been alive." Dr. Kwan had smiled, patient. "Sure, but I mean deliberately, with intention. 3 places people often ignore as they age. They're simple, but vital." So that morning, Walter resolved to follow the advice to the letter. After all, what did he have to lose? The first part was the feet. Walter sat on the edge of the tub and carefully lifted one foot after the other, massaging warm, soapy water into his skin. Years ago, he wouldn't have thought twice about his feet, but now he understood their importance. They carried him everywhere, still did, despite the stiffness in his knees. Neglect could lead to fungus, infections, cracks that never quite healed. He remembered Martha's voice again. "Healthy feet mean freedom," she used to say, especially after her own mobility began to fade. As he scrubbed between his toes and rinsed thoroughly, he realized how good it felt. Not just the cleanliness, but the attention. It reminded him that his body, even in old age, was worth caring for. Next, the underarms. He reached for a fresh washcloth and began to clean the area slowly, carefully. The skin there was sensitive, thinner now, but it was a place prone to bacteria, to buildup, especially in the folds. Doctor, Kwan had explained how poor hygiene under the arms could lead to skin infections, even systemic problems if ignored long enough. "Sweat glands slow down, but bacteria doesn't," he had said with a wink. Walter used to think of underarm washing as a perfunctory step, a quick swipe. Now he took his time. The habit became almost meditative, a ritual instead of a chore. Finally, the groin. This part made him pause. There was a quiet dignity in aging, but it also meant confronting vulnerabilities. The groin area was delicate, private, and as Dr. Kwan had pointed out, a common site of infections in older adults due to moisture and friction. Walter washed gently, thoroughly, noting how the warmth of the water soothed aching muscles he hadn't known were tense. When he was done, he dried each part with care. It struck him that he had spent more time on these 3 areas than he had in years past. Not out of vanity, but self-respect. Each movement felt like a promise to keep moving, to stay alive, to stay human. Over the weeks that followed, this small ritual began to transform Walter's mornings. His balance improved, subtly at first. He didn't slip as often. The minor skin irritations he used to ignore vanished. More than that, he began to feel different inside, stronger, more grounded. Neighbors started to notice too. "You're walking straighter," one said as he tended his rose bushes. Another commented on the gleam in his eyes during a book club meeting. Walter laughed them off, but inside he knew. It wasn't magic or medicine. It was mindfulness, discipline, and 3 simple acts of care. He started talking about it at the community center. At first, his friends scoffed. "You mean to tell me washing my feet's going to give me an extra 5 years?" one joked. Walter shrugged. "Maybe not 5 years, but 5 more walks with your granddaughter, that's worth something." They listened. Soon, others were trying it too. Harold, whose diabetes made foot care essential. Dolores, who struggled with mobility and skin rashes. They began comparing notes, swapping soap recommendations, chuckling about how something so basic was changing their lives. Walter never saw himself as a teacher. But somehow, this small piece of wisdom had become his message. Months passed, then a year. Walter celebrated his 84th birthday surrounded by friends. There was no cake with too many candles, no grand speeches, just laughter, some jazz on the radio, and a sense of quiet gratitude. He stood in the bathroom that evening, brushing his teeth. Then he paused, looking at his reflection again. The flickering light still hadn't been fixed, but his eyes still held the same clarity. He went through the motions once more. Feet, underarms, groin. Not out of fear or obsession, but because these three small acts reminded him, every single day, that life is worth tending to. Walter knew he wouldn't live forever, but while he was here, he would live well. And he would be clean. Everywhere that counted.